Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar, Tropical Forest Finance Facility, TFFF, a full solution for forests. This is a webinar organized by Fundación Solón, the Global Forest Coalition, and Asamblea Mundial por la Amazonía. We are happy to have you here from different countries. Welcome. Please send us in the chat your name, your country, and the name of your organization, and we'll be happy to exchange with you via the chat. We want to welcome everyone here to say thank you for joining this important topic and give the first and initial housekeeping rules that are always important, sometimes repetitive in these webinars, but important also to keep us all on the same page. This webinar is being recorded and we're having live streaming. We're having live streaming today via Facebook of Fundación Solón, GFC, and also Systemic Alternatives. It is very important that you please use headphones. Use your headphones because the interpreters need to hear clearly what you're saying. Also, mute your mic when you're not speaking so we can preserve a good sound environment during the session. And also, please speak slowly. Try to speak slowly and clearly so that our interpreters can reproduce your interventions while we're here. Finally, I want to say that this is a safe space. This is a space to exchange reflections, to learn from each other, so there are no wrong questions. Today, we're going to have important and very interesting experts on the TFFF and other schemes that are related to forests. And I also want to say that it's very important to have you here and be here in this session, considering the state of global forests and how they have been at stake over the last decades. I will start by giving some brief context before introducing our panel of experts. Today, Brazil, Indonesia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo combined, they have an estimated of 52% of the world's rainforests. And we're here today to hear from our experts to see what these countries are, why these countries are so relevant in terms of forest protection. And to also understand, learn, hear from them on how this mechanism, TFFF, was conceived, who originated this idea, where this idea was originated, and also to problematize some important issues regarding TFFF. The first of the key elements would be to debate, to reflect on this issue of assigning a monetary value to forest ecosystem. Is it possible actually to do it? And also how this TFFF proposal, is informed or is being complemented by the logic of financiarization of nature, green capitalism, and how realistic it is to collect money and have profits to save forest ecosystems. So those are questions that our panelists will try to answer, to exchange, to reflect about, as well as, of course, the role of indigenous peoples, local communities, Afro-descendant communities into these, and other relevant actors, of course, particularly women, into these alternatives, into this scheme. And finally, we're going to hear also some alternatives, if there are some, to the TFFF, This webinar is also based on a report that was jointly launched by Fundación Solón and GFC. We are going to share the report in English, Portuguese, Spanish, and Bahasa, so that you can access and also help us to join into this campaign. Finally, I want to say that this is an unprecedented campaign. This is the first ever published report on this issue of TFFE, presenting critical analysis by independent CSOs. So please, without further ado, I'm gonna pass the floor to our first panelist, Pablo Solón. Pablo Solón is gonna bring some insights on how the economics of TFFF works and how deforestation is actually creating an unequal system regarding forest and forest peoples. Pablo is the executive director of Fundación Solón. Pablo is from Bolivia, is based also in Bolivia, and he is an activist and policy research for quite a long time, right, Pablo? And I think some of his areas of expertise include water, climate, environmental justice, trade, finance, and systemic alternatives. Pablo was also Bolivian ambassador to the UN. I think it was from 2009 to 2011, right, Pablo? And he also co-organized a very important event, the World People's Conference on Climate Change and the Rights of Mother Earth in Cochabamba, which was a quite important CSO struggle by the time. Welcome, Pablo, and thank you for being here, everyone, and our panelists and speakers.
Muchas gracias, Valentina. Un saludo a todos ustedes.
Thank you, Valentina.
En español.
Send my greetings to everyone, and I'll be speaking in Spanish. I'm going to also refer fundamentally to the economic aspect of this proposal.
Kwami de Togo se va a referir más al
Kwami
tema de
from
cómo está
Togo will
estructurada
talk
la
more
participación
about how the
de los
participation is
gobiernos, el
structured,
involucramiento de pueblos indígenas,
from
y otros
government
aspectos. Mi
participation,
intervención va a ser sobre la
indigenous
parte
communities.
económica, y Merilu va a hablar
And
más sobre la parte más
Mary
de
Lou will speak
alternativas.
more about alternatives.
Entonces,
So
nosotros primero, para hacer
we first,
análisis crítico, nos
to
hemos
begin with
basado
this critical
en
analysis, we've
dos versiones
looked
que
at
se
two
conocen
versions
sobre la propuesta de TFF.
about the proposal of TFFF.
Aquí las pueden ver. Una
You can see
versión
here,
salió
one
en el
version
mes de
came out
mitad de año del año pasado, de 2024,
mid
y la
last year,
otra es esta
2024,
versión que ha
and the
salido
other
en
is this
febrero.
version that came out recently.
Y nosotros hemos hecho un estudio
And we have
tratándonos de
carried out a
basar en
study
lo que dice textualmente primero,
to
para no
see
hacer una
what it
interpretación
says
que no
first
se
in the
ajuste
text,
a
to
lo que
not
dicen el texto
interpret
de ambas
something
versiones.
incorrectly. We want to see what the text says in both versions.
Entonces, el primer tema
So
que
the
queremos
first
tratar
topic
es que el
that we
enfoque
want
de
to talk
TFF
about is that the
es
focus of
que
TFFF
vamos
is
que la deforestación es principalmente una falla de
that
mercado que se
deforestation
resuelve
is a
poniendo
market
valor monetario a
failing
los
that will
servicios
be resolved
ecosistémicos de los bosques. Esta es la
by
pregunta
putting a monetary
que
value
todos nos
on
tenemos que
the
hacer, porque esa es
services
la
of
pregunta
forest ecosystems.
que
This is a
TFF
question we have
considera
to
que es
ask
así,
if
que hay una falla
TFFF,
de
the logic,
mercado y que el problema de
considers
la
that that's how it works, that
deforestación
there's a failing of
no
the
se
market
debe a que no
and
se le ha
the
puesto un
issue of
valor monetario.
deforestation
Leo
would only be
textualmente lo que
resolved by
dice la
putting a
versión
monetary
1
value on
de
forests.
este documento de
Next,
TFFF. Y dice así: al valorar los bosques tropicales en pie y restaurados,
so
el
the
mecanismo
The report says this: as valuing the tropical forests, the TFFF will help to resolve a current failing of the market as far as values of services that forest ecosystems give, as far as carbon, water, preservation of biodiversity, protection of the soil, nutrient cycles, and regulation of the climate and climate resilience. The correction of these failures will lower poverty and promote economic development in countries with forests around the world.
Lo que tenemos que hacer es supuestamente valorizar
what we need to do is, they say that TFFF, the logic of TFFF says that we have to value these aspects of the forest in an economic manner to stop deforestation. The concept of that proposal says that forests are service providers. And so you see this in red. These are the services that the forest provides. And so we have to ask, how much value do these services have?
¿Realmente TFF busca hacer una valorización monetaria? El análisis que
How can
nosotros
we
hacemos es
have a monetary value of
porque
these services?
el valor que va a asignar TFFF a todos estos servicios ecosistémicos es de $4
All of these
por hectárea de
services,
bosque
economic
en pie,
services,
lo que
say
es
that it's
una
$4 per square
Entonces,
foot,
toda esta concepción
which
de
is ridiculous.
financiarización de la
This
naturaleza,
concept of
está
financing,
demostrando su total
giving a financial value to the forest,
incongruencia al decir que semejante cantidad de servicios ecosistémicos podrían valorizarse o tener un valor de $4 por hectárea.
The idea
Desde
that we
nuestro
could have
punto de
$4 per
lo
hectare,
desarrollará mucho más Merilu Mali. No podemos fraccionar a los bosques en servicios ecosistémicos y quererles poner un precio.
we can't
Los bosques son
put a
sistemas de
price
vida
on
y hay que tratarlos como
ecosystems.
tales, como sistemas
These
de vida
are
que tienen
systems of life, and we
sus
have to treat
propios
them that
ciclos,
way. They
sus
have their own
propios derechos
cycles,
y que hay que
their own rights,
respetarlos y no
and they have to
tratarlos
be
como un
respected, and they
objeto al
can't
cual
be
hay que
treated
darle
as an
un valor.
object with value,
Pero la
an
lógica de
economic value.
TFFF
But
es
the
que sí hay
logic
que
of
darle un valor.
TFFF is
Y
that
su
we
propuesta
do have to give
es
it an economic
que
value.
en
And
todos
its
estos
proposal
países que
is that
ustedes
in
ven
all of these
en
countries that
verde,
you see in green,
van a ser elegibles para TFF. Allí donde es el verde
would be eligible
claro
for
son
TFFF.
países donde están los bosques tropicales y el verde oscuro marca la totalidad del país.
You
Son
can
más de
see
60 países
that
y se
there's more than
calcula
60
en la
countries,
propuesta de
and they're
TFF
calculated in
que
the
habrían
TFFF proposal
1.000 millones de
that
hectáreas de
there would
bosque
be
que
1 billion
necesitarían
hectares of
tener
forest
apoyo, financiamiento
that would
de
need
$4
this support
por hectárea al año. Lo que
of
quiere
$4
decir
per
que
hectare
habría que
a
juntar
year,
4.000 millones de
which means we
dólares
should put
al
together
año
$4 billion a
para
year
repartirlos entre todos
to
estos más de 60
be
países del
divided
mundo
between
que
60
serían
countries in the
parte
world.
del
That would be
mecanismo.
part of the
Y
mechanism.
obviamente el país con
And
mayores bosques
obviously,
tropicales, en
the
este caso,
country
por
with
ejemplo,
more
Brasil, recibiría casi
more
la
tropical
mitad
forests, in
de
this case
estos
Brazil,
4.000
would receive
millones de dólares.
about half of
Obviamente,
the $4 billion.
aclara que recibirán
And
en tanto su
TFFF,
deforestación vaya reduciendo
TFFF
y esté por
says
debajo de un determinado porcentaje.
that it would be decided by a
¿De dónde van
percentage.
a venir los 4.000 millones de dólares que cada año se
The
distribuirían
$4,000
por
that would be
hectárea
distributed
a todos los
each
países?
year to
La
every
propuesta
country.
de TFF
And so the
es,
proposal of
por un lado,
TFFF
prestarse
is on one side
125,000 millones de dólares a
giving
una tasa de interés de aproximadamente
$125
4,4%
billion
y
as
luego
a préstamo,
prestar esos
as a
125,000
loan
millones de
with
dólares a una tasa
4.4%,
de interés de
and then
7,5%. De la
then
diferencia entre
loaning
el
that
interés
money
al que
out with
uno se presta
7.5%
y el interés al que
interest.
uno presta,
And
vendría
so
una
the
ganancia y
interest,
esa ganancia serían los
looking at the
4,000
difference between the
millones de
interest on
dólares
the borrow and the
aproximadamente que
interest
se
on the
distribuirían entre
lending,
cada
would
uno de los
generate
países de acuerdo
income that
a
would
los
be
bosques que
divided
mantiene en
between
pie y
each
al grado
country,
de
depending
deforestación
on
que ha tenido
how much forest they have kept
en el año
preserved
en relación al año
and
pasado.
connected to the level of deforestation in each country.
Entonces, es un mecanismo,
And so it's a mechanism.
a veces puede parecer muy complicado, pero es como
It
funcionan
could
los
seem
bancos.
complicated, but it's how
Se
banks work.
prestan, en inglés, borrow
They
money a un cierto interés bajo y lo vuelven a prestar
borrow
a un interés
money
más
at a
alto.
low interest
En
and
este
then
caso,
they lend it out at a higher interest.
TFF dice,
So in this case, TFF
el
says,
TFF, y esto es textual en la versión 2,
this
no
is
depende de
text on the
subvenciones de
second
donantes,
version. It
sujetas a
says
los
the
caprichos de
TFFF
nuevos
doesn't
regímenes
depend
o a las prioridades
on
cambiantes del
donors,
presupuesto de
but
los países ricos,
and
sino más
the
bien
different
ofrece una
the
sólida y
changing
atractiva propuesta a
ideas
los
of different
inversores,
regimens in
patrocinadores,
rich countries, but
generando
rather
retornos de
offers a
mercado
solid and
competitivos.
attractive proposal for
Es decir,
investors,
van a
generating
recibirse
returns in competitive
inversiones
markets.
del
And so
sector
that's to
privado
say
y
that
también del sector público que van a tener una
investment
tasa
in the
de
private and
retorno.
public sectors will have a return.
Podemos ver
We
en su
can see
propuesta
in the
el
proposal
20% de estos 125
that
mil millones de
20%
dólares
of the
van a venir de lo que le
25,000
llaman
or $25
patrocinadores
billion
del TFF.
will be
Estos son
created
países de
by
renta alta, organismos
patrons of
multilaterales,
TFFF,
ONGs
which would
internacionales
be
que harán una inversión única
countries
y
with high
completamente
GDP,
reembolsable.
multilateral
Estos
organizations,
25,000 millones de
international
dólares le
NGOs,
permitirán
and this
apalancar
$25 billion
de
would
inversores de
allow
mercado, que así lo define en la propuesta de
for
TFFF,
the
100 mil
proposal of
millones de dólares.
TFFF to
Y
have
prácticamente de forma textual dice, se reclutarían
$100
en
billion,
los mercados de capital de deuda mediante la emisión de bonos de alta
which would
calificación y a largo
create
plazo para
markets of
inversores que
capital,
busquen
debt
una
capital, through
remuneración
emission
un
of
poco mayor a la ofrecida por los títulos públicos
bonus,
de países como Estados Unidos.
who would
Esa es la propuesta de
bring
TFF.
support from
Recurrir a un financiamiento
countries
en
like
su
the
mayoría
US. And this is
público y
the proposal
multilateral de 25,000 millones de
of
dólares para apalancar 100
the
mil
TFFF,
millones de dólares de el sector privado y en
and it
base
would be
a
brought
esta
by
inversión que se haría de este dinero
the
se
private
generarían los
sector.
4,000 millones de dólares.
And that's how the
¿Cuál es
400
nuestra opinión al respecto?
billion,
¿Por qué somos
$400 million would be
absolutamente
created?
críticos y contrarios a este mecanismo? Porque
So we have to look at
primero
the
deja en manos
criticism
la
of the
suerte de los
mechanisms
bosques
of this
a la
mechanism, because
inversión
it leaves
privada.
the
El
hands
80% de
it,
inversión
it leaves
privada y el 20% de
the
deuda del sector
resolution of
público
deforestation in the hands of private
estatal.
investment.
Mientras que, por ejemplo, si vemos el
While, for
presupuesto
example,
de
if we
la
look at the
militar
budget
a nivel mundial,
of
ha
world
llegado a
military
superar
expenditure, it's
este año
it's gone higher
una
each year.
cantidad colosal. Y si solamente destináramos el
And if we
1%
would
de lo que
just
se
put
está
1% of what we
invirtiendo o
put towards
destinando de fondos
military
públicos para el sector
for
de
public
armamento,
funds,
tendríamos 27,000
we would
millones de
have
dólares para
$27
los bosques, casi 7 veces
billion
más que el TFF.
for forests, which is 7 times more than the
Si
TFFF proposal.
vemos el tema de los subsidios a los
If we
combustibles
look
fósiles,
at the issue of subsidies
anualmente,
for
y
fossil
tomando el
fuels,
promedio
if
del
we take the
2023,
average of 2023,
ya se gasta por parte de fondos públicos, no de inversión privada, no sujeto a mercados bursátiles, 600.000 millones de
what
dólares.
has been spent
150 veces
600
más que el TFF. Si tomamos
$60
en
billion.
cuenta
It's
el
also
precio del
many
barril de
times more than the
petróleo que está en
TFFF.
75
If we look
dólares,
at the
si solo
price
se
of
aplicara $1 de
a barrel of
impuesto
crude oil,
al barril de petróleo, se
which
podría
is in
recabar
38,
38.000
if we
millones
just
de
put
dólares al
$1
año,
of tax
10
on
veces
each
más que el
barrel of
TFF.
petroleum,
Entonces,
then we
¿por
could
qué
have $38,000
estamos destinando todo
a year?
estamos
So
creando
why
un mecanismo
are we
que va a
creating this
depender de la
mechanism that
inversión
depends
privada
on
para
private
salvar a los
investment
bosques
to be
cuando
able to
se
save
están
our forests
destinando
when we are
cientos, sino
sending
miles
hundreds
de
or
veces más
thousands
recursos
of
públicos de los
times
estados
of resources, public
para
resources
fines
from the
totalmente
state
nocivos para
to
el planeta, como es la emisión de gases de
things
efecto
that
invernadero,
are
como
so
son
bad for
las
our
armas.
planet, like
Nosotros
greenhouse
creemos que la
emissions of
premisa de
greenhouse
TFF
gases
está
and
mal.
creating arms.
Querer buscar un mecanismo
We
para
believe that
decir ahora
TFFF
ya no les vamos a pedir a los
is
estados que
creating
destinen
a
su dinero
mechanism
porque
that now
ellos
says
prefieren
we're not going to
destinarlo al
ask
sector
the
militar
governments
o a
to
subvencionar
send their
combustibles
money for
fósiles,
forests
es
because we know
darles
they
una puerta
prefer
de
to
salida. Y
finance
creemos que esta puerta de salida
militaries
es la
and
que está proponiendo
and
el gobierno de
fossil
Brasil junto a
fuels.
otros gobiernos y por eso
And
somos muy
so Brazil and
críticos
others
y hemos realizado
are
esta publicación
promoting this idea.
con
That's
la que
why
me
we're very
despido,
critical
que
of
está en
this
diferentes idiomas y
idea.
que la van a poder
And so you can
encontrar en
see
el sitio
this
web de
this
Global
publication
Forest Coalition y
in
de
various
Alternativas
languages.
Sistémicas.
You can find it on the Global
Muchísimas
Forest
gracias.
Coalition website. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Pablo. Muchas gracias por compartir con
Thank you,
nosotros
Pablo. Thank you for
esas
sharing with
reflexiones
us
iniciales.
these initial
Realmente es
reflections. It's really
impresionante los datos que compartes
im-
y mientras te oía me
incredible
hacía
the
justamente la
information
misma
that you shared
pregunta,
with
¿por
us.
qué razón
And
se
I asked
continúan
myself, why
invirtiendo
are
grandes
they
cantidades de
continuing to
recursos
invest these huge
para
amounts of
seguir
resources to
promoviendo
continue
soluciones
promoting
que en definitiva no
solutions
van
that
a resolver el
definitely
problema
will not
raíz de
resolve
deforestación?
the
Y creo que
root
esto
issue
puede
of
dar a muchas
deforestation?
otras
And
preguntas y muchos
so
otros
this could
temas
bring me
para
to many other
reflexionar.
questions and topics to reflect
Por
on.
favor, déjennos sus preguntas en el chat
Please
si
put your
tienen algunas
questions in
mientras
the chat
vaya
if you have any
cada panelista,
questions
cada
as each
experta
panelist is
hablando,
presenting,
para tener después de que cada uno
to
converse una sesión de preguntas y respuestas.
then
Vamos a
use them
movernos
for the
ahora
session,
hacia
the question
nuestro
and answer
siguiente
session at the
experto, mi
end.
colega
Next, we'll go
Kwami Kpondzo.
Kwami Kpondzo,
Kwami va a compartir algunas
who
reflexiones sobre
Kwami will
quiénes
share some
reciben y
reflections
qué
about
reciben,
who
¿no? A partir
receives
de
from
esta
this proposal
iniciativa.
and
¿Quién
what do they
recibe y
receive?
qué se recibe? Y esta
Who receives
correlación,
and
¿no?
what do they
Este
receive? The
criterio, que era otra
correlation
pregunta que me
of,
hacía mientras escuchaba a
and this was
Pablo.
another question that I had as I was
A
listening to
partir de
Pablo.
qué presupuestos, ¿no? Se
What are the
determina
budgets
esta
that are
relación de
determined, the
$4
relationship
por
of
hectárea de
$4
bosque
per
en pie?
hectare in
¿Quién destina esto?
a
¿Qué
forest?
criterio? Y
What
bueno, antes
criteria is
de
used to
pasarle la
determine
palabra a
this?
Kwami,
And so
quisiera
before
contarles un
I pass
poco
the mic
quién
to
es
Kwami, I
Kwami.
would
Kwami, bueno,
like
es
to
de
share a little
Togo,
bit who
es mi
is Kwami.
colega
He's
en
from
la
Togo.
Coalición
He's
Mundial por los
my
Bosques.
colleague
Él
in the
coordina
Global
la
Forest Coalition,
campaña de
and
extractivismo, turismo e
he's in the
infraestructura
campaign
que
of
tenemos en la coalición.
around
Y también
extractivism and
ha
tourism
tenido
that
un
we have
trabajo
in
muy
our coalition.
interesante
And
en
he's
su
also done
organización que se
interesting
llama
work in his
Centro para la
organization
Justicia
that's called
Ambiental en Togo, que es una ONG
the
que
Center
tiene un
for
gran
uh,
trabajo de
Environmental
apoyo
Justice in Togo,
a
which
las
is a
comunidades
NGO
para
that
fortalecer
gives
las
a lot of support to
alternativas al
communities to
extractivismo,
strengthen
alternativas justas.
alternatives to
Y bueno, por
extractivism,
supuesto, Kwami también
just
está
alternatives. And
involucrado
of
muy
course, Kwame
profundamente
is
con
also
comunidades
deeply
que
involved in
dependen y
communities
que tienen una
that
conexión
depend
profunda con los
on and
bosques
have
en
deep
África para justamente
connections with
promover el
forests in Africa
conocimiento
to be able to
tradicional,
promote
luchar contra la
those
deforestación de raíz y
the
también
traditional
la
methods of
pérdida de
fighting against
biodiversidad que está
deforestation,
tremendamente
and also
conectado
to promote biodiversity,
con
which
la
is
deforestación.
very
Kwami,
connected to
adelante y gracias por
deforestation.
estar aquí.
So, Kwame, go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Valentina. And thank you all for joining this important webinar. Thank you, Pablo, for giving the overview of TFFF. Yeah, as Valentina said, I'm going to be brief and explain quickly why we are against um, this mechanism and focusing more on the role of government and the role of indigenous people, local communities in terms of receiving uh, receiving money. And before I start, let me share quickly this. Let me share this quote from Gandhi. Many people, especially ignorant people, want to punish you for speaking the truth, for being correct, for being you. Never apologize for being correct or for being years ahead of your time. If you are right and you know it, speak your mind. Even if you are a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. I'm sharing this just to say that, yes, in this context of TFFF, we are minority in speaking our mind, speaking what we think of this mechanism. We think that is the first solution to climate change, and it's going to destroy local communities and indigenous people. So we are speaking the truth to that. TFFF, regarding the amount of money that is that they say it will bring, we say it's a distraction. Distraction. If you look at the two versions of the TFFF, it recognizes that if 125 billion cannot be raised, or if the rates of return is less than 7.5%, the payment per hectare will be less than 4, or even temporarily suspended. It means a lot of things. So it means that TFFF is just a money-making machine, not a climate solution. So money-making machine, and money is going where? Money is going mostly to the government. We're going to see that. So it's a money-making machine only. They are just putting, as Pablo explained, they are just putting money on the nature to have more profits. They don't care of the destruction of this mechanism they are putting in place. So it's also a form of exploitation and domination, because putting money on nature has very big consequences. So it will be driving away passion of local uh, uh, conservation, which is good intentionally, actually. Local communities, indigenous people, they have good intention to conserve, and they are doing it with passion. But putting money or putting incentives, uh, money for people to conserve, it will drive away that passion. And then the government will come in to exploit more the nature, exploit more people, because people will be denied to go into that forest. And it's kind of domination. So we say that tropical forests are well conserved by indigenous people knowledge methods. So we can't take away what belongs to them in putting money on on the nature. So it's totally a distraction from climate solution. So who benefits? Who benefits from TFFF. Actually, if you look at the TFFF versions 1 and 2, you see clearly that national governments, they will receive 80% of the total amount, and it will be directly go to the Ministry of Finance. And it says that the government will create its own mechanism of disbursement. There is no guidance. There is no templates to oblige the government to support to disburse the fund. So they can do whatever they want to people, to communities, if the money is there. So 80% is huge amount. And looking at what is going to the actors on the ground is 20%, including local governments, businesses, individual landowners, indigenous people, and local communities. You see that the part that is going to governments is far higher than the part that is going to local communities and indigenous people. So the TFFF making annual payments to Ministry of Finance in the partnering countries, showing clearly that the interest of TFFF is not on people, but it's only on the government, captured by the financiers, captured by the sponsors of TFFF. So it's also clear that it's a system that will going to exploit more indigenous people, local communities. So it doesn't say much on the debts, for instance, who is going to be responsible of the debts. And this is dangerous because it's gonna be a loan, and the country's gonna be in the debt trap. So it's very important to denounce this activity now. And if you look at the indigenous people and local communities, the concept say clearly that they own 54% of the world remaining intact forest. It means a lot. It means that even if we don't have this mechanism of TFFF, it means that indigenous people and local communities have their way to keep the forests. And 54% is more far than the majority of the forests that are not kept intact. So the indigenous people and local communities, they save the nature, they conserve better, and the TFFF, this mechanism, is coming to destroy the indigenous people and local communities' methods of conservation. So, and looking at the benefits that's going to local communities and indigenous people, it's nothing. It's nothing compared to what's going to national government. So we're going to look at the governance, how the money is flowing. So we have two structures, the Tropical Forest Investment Funds, and then the facility. So those two structures are under the TFFF. under the big mechanism. And the tropical forest investment funds will manage the loans and the bonds of public and private investors. And there will be also a board of directors. And the board of directors, the Tropical Forest Investment Fund will have its own board of directors, and the facility will also have its board of directors. And the facility, it's a kind of beneficiary mechanism where the Tropical Forest Investment Fund, after deducting all expenses, will send the benefit to the facility. Then the facility will have the responsibility to redistribute these benefits to the partners. And if you look at that image, it's clear that they have the organigrams, and the TFEF board will be different from the mechanism, the facility board. And the facility board is the one controlling actually the TFEF board. So what exactly this means is that if you look at the boards, the investors will have 9 persons in the board, and the countries partners of this facility together will have 9%. So the total numbers of the board members is 18. But if you look at it clearly, the minority are the countries, because they have three people per country, and the investors have in total 9. So this is something that we need to look at again, and it's not helping the indigenous people and local communities. So I think the secretariats, looking at the secretariats, it's probably going to be the World Bank. They are looking at which institution. They are looking at which institution will take care of the secretariat. It will be a combined secretariat, a common secretariat for the facility and for the Tropical Forest Investment Fund. And the secretariat will provide investment management service for its portfolio, and also arrange satellite monitoring and verification services. So for me, I felt like this arrangement from the monitoring will just monitor how the exploitation of people, how exploitation of nature is going on. And if they are monitoring it and verify if they're going to gain more money or not, they will put in place another system to have more people exploited. And also providing investment management, is they just want to make more profit. So the World Bank, if the World Bank become the secretariat, we know what the World Bank is doing with some of the projects, with the project on agriculture, with the project on climate issues, where they put money, but they don't care about the impacts of their projects on communities. And if the World Bank is going to be the secretariat, then it's confirming our worries. It's confirming what we think, that this TFFF will be exploiting more the nature and exploiting more the people. Yeah. So Thank you for your attention. But I just want to recall that the real conservation is on the hands of local communities and IPs, and not incentivize conservation. So the incentivized conservation is just to destroy the nature, just to destroy the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwami, for giving us these important insights. I want to remember all participants that the comments by our experts today are based on the two concept notes released by the TFFF. So anything that has been produced here, the analysis that has been produced in this report, in this analysis, is based in a robust analysis to see what is behind the methodology and the proposal of TFFF. So the idea is to bring critical reflections, right, today. We are analyzing from a community perspective, from a women's perspective, from an indigenous people's perspective, a proposal that is being put forward by a group of governments with support and promotion probably of the World Bank and multilateral financial institutions. So we are interested into knowing that. Thank you, Kwami. I have some questions, but I will leave them to the last part of the session, particularly on that reflection of the composition of the secretariat. And also in terms of decision making within this secretariat, because we see that in the JEF, the CBD's mechanism to allocate also and mobilize resources, we see a similar, structure in terms of no active participation of those who are at the forefront of forest and biodiversity conservation. So it is quite interesting what you mentioned in terms of those decision-making and power access structures within the TFFF. We're going to go now to our next speaker. Our next expert is Marilu Malik. She is going to share about the alternatives to TFFF. Are there any alternatives, Marilu, to TFFF? And also, what is the role of those systems of life within this equation? And also versus the ecosystem services proposal and concept that is being put ahead. Also, in terms of the root causes of deforestation and the central roles of indigenous people, local communities, particularly women and youth. And Marilu is the policy director of the Global Forest Coalition. She is originally from the Philippines. She's based now in Bolivia and has a strong background as a policy analyst. She's also an activist and a campaigner who has published and written widely about trade, food, agriculture, climate change, and deforestation. And she has some interesting reflections today. Please, Marilu, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Valentina. What am I doing? Yeah. Do you see my slides? You do, right?
Yes.
Slides. Wait. I'm sorry. Slideshow. Wait. Just give me a second. I shall slideshow. There you go. Okay. So, all right. So, as Valentina said, we there were two version 1 and version 2. So there were two proposals on TFF. The first title was Tropical Forest Financing Facility, and then the second one was Tropical forest forever facility, and it was the first version was released by the Brazilian government during Cali in the CBD, and then the second one came out this February. We wrote an analysis collectively, so we published this collectively as GIFs, as Global Forest Coalition and Fundación Salon. So we have been looking at this proposal since last year, since the first version came out. And in fact, even before that version came out, because there were already discussions about it during the G20. And if the group of 20, which Brazil and Indonesia are part of, and they came out a little bit of context. There was a report that came out from the UN that said that the three most important tropical forests are the Amazon, the DRC, and Indonesia. And shortly after that, the G20 had a side event where they in Brazil, Indonesia, and they invited the president of the DRC, and they came out with a press conference saying that they were coming together as the three governments, as the three biggest tropical forests, and that they were going to come out with a mechanism to conserve conserve, as Kwame says, conserve has a lot of connotations, different kinds of connotations, but to conserve the three largest tropical forests. So we've been following it, and we came out with a publication, and it's available in several languages. You can look on our website, and it breaks down basically what Pablo presented and what Kwame presented, so you can go back to that publication and read it and read it and absorb it a little bit more. I know it's a lot to absorb in a webinar, because there's a lot of numbers being thrown at you. But yes, it's available in several languages. It's on the GFC website, and the goal of that publication is really to unmask the TFF. What does it mean? What is this money being promised? Where is it really gonna go? And 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 how is it supposed to work? There are things like, for example, 80 cents out of will 80 cent like per number per amount earned, 80 cents will go to indigenous peoples, so a lot of promises, a lot of money, and it sounds attractive when the Brazilian government and the Indonesian and DRC present it, because it feels like the money is gonna go directly to the indigenous peoples and the local communities. But as Pablo and Kwame have explained, that's not the whole story, and really you really have to go into the details to see where and how and what is going to happen, and what possible consequences are going to come about if this mechanism is fully realized. So we have come together, and I think really definitely we are campaigning and really trying to gain more momentum and share information and analysis in us, and that's why we wanted it in several languages, so that we can really disseminate the analysis and really help people really understand what is happening and what this proposal really means for the forests and the communities um living there. So my presentation is alternatives from people and nature, and I hope that the way we arranged it as that I will be bring a little bit more joy to this presentation, because it's been a little bit all a little bit scary and a little bit depressing, because we were seeing that maybe it's not called a market mechanism directly, but it is, so now we're going to see, I think I'm gonna try my best to be a little bit more upbeat, so we we lift the mood a little bit more, and then before we have our commenters and questions. So okay, um so we have alternatives from people in nature. First, I wanted to show you. So this is our map. So what we wanted to signify with this is that we're bringing the three continents together. Of people. So the peoples from the Amazon, the peoples from the DRC in Africa, the peoples from Indonesia and Asia, and really coming together, building that alliance and working together. And this webinar is, for example, um one of those efforts, because this is going to be a series. So for example, this webinar, it is like at a good time for participants from from the Americas. Um, and the next webinar, we are going to make sure that it's at a time where it's good for an audience of Africa. And then we're going to have a third webinar where it's at a good time for an audience of Indonesians and Asians. So really, and then always constantly us being present in one another's events, because we're really building an alliance, like a campaign where because we know that we're going to be stronger together as the three continents. And I believe that this is already a very important, and I see it as a step towards already achieve an achievement, because we've brought together three continents, um, uh, movements and indigenous peoples and local communities from the three continents, and campaigning to stop the TFF, unmask it, and to push for the people's alternatives, many of which are already being implemented in many of these places across the three continents. So next is well, here I just wanted to share a picture from Indonesia. So I wanted to emphasize that communities, indigenous peoples, the people living in forest communities, local peoples, that women and girls are a big part of that, and that they are part of the solution, and that a lot of them are implementing the solutions. So this picture is in an agroecology school in Indonesia. And they one of the things that is emphasized in this school is um, that not only, of course, agroecology in terms of having a way of agriculture that respects nature, but also coexisting with forests, with and making sure that that everything we do, food, feeding people culturally appropriate food, healthy food, which is what food sovereignty is all about. But it's also about coexisting, and preserving and health and growing together with nature. So we see nature as part of us. We are part of nature. Nature is part of us. We are one. it's not separate. So definitely, I think I want to emphasize that, especially because there was well, you'll see this in our report, but we quote one commenter who said that this is great. The TFF is great because it is we see the trees as shareholders, like stockholders, which is disgusting. That is a disgusting term to use. And it's disgusting, it's ridiculous, it's disrespectful. Trees are not shareholders. Trees are right are rights holders. Like nature has rights. And we do not disrespect it this way, like by commodifying it. And this is exactly what TFF is doing. It's commodification. So basically, yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize we're part of nature, nature's part of us. Women and girls play a very important role, and that we can definitely, and many communities across the three continents already implement a lot of ways of coexisting with nature, whether with the forests, with growing food, with the rivers, with the animals. So I think that's the main point. So next. So so I think we definitely we must, for us to have real I think for us to really grow and emphasize alternatives, um and support alternatives and build and strengthen existing alternatives and build more on the alternatives. First, I think we need to recognize the tropical forests as rights holders and not just mere providers of commodities. And and most especially, they are not banking instruments. I think that's number one. We need to really, I think, emphasize that they are not commodities, they are not banking instruments, they are not shareholders. And I think to save tropical forests, it is essential to recognize that the problem is not a market failure, but rather a lack of respect and protection for living systems. Because you will hear a lot of the people who defend TFF and the proposal of TFF is that they're saying that tropical forests in the three continents are suffering from deforestation or from um loss of land, loss of, the losses that the tropical forests are suffering is because there's not enough market intervention, and therefore the solution is that we put more market in it, so therefore, as Pablo and Kwame explained, the putting prices on hectares, per hectare it's this much, um per per standing tree it's this much, so it's a really wrong mindset, because it's thinking that we're going to save the tropical forests by putting a price on it. um and this is not the way to go. If we really want to save tropical forests, first we need to respect it and really see it as living systems, and that we are going to protect it and coexist with it, and push the existing alternatives and traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples, local communities, um who are already taking care of tropical forests across the three continents. It's also necessary for us to support these communities, because a lot of them already have real solutions, but they're not heard.
Sorry, Marilu.
Yeah.
One more minute. Just,
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Just to.
Okay. Okay, almost done. So really just, uplifting their voices, making sure that they're heard, making sure that, you know, the indigenous groups, peasant communities, Afro-descendants, quilombolas, traditional communities, and grassroots organizations and movements are given a voice, and really that we support them, and in all the different ways that we can, and really one and coming together across the three continents and supporting each other. And I think that just a last thing, a concrete number that I want to end with. We can raise 6 times more funds than the TFF would. So the TFF promises $26.4 billion. If we allocate just 1% of all national defense budgets to a fund for forests, we would raise $26.4 billion. Um, that's just 1% of all national defense budgets. So why that alone is an incredible number. It's unacceptable to use public funds for military spending and wars and unnecessary wars, while the survival of forests depend, uh, is in crisis. And just last line, applying a tax of just $1 per barrel of oil could raise almost 10 times more than the $4 billion that the TFF hopes to raise annually through unsecured investments amid the crisis of change and biodiversity. So, number one, if we allocate 1% of national defense budgets, we already reached 26.4 billion. That's much more than the 4 billion that the TFF promises. And if we tax oil $1 only per barrel, we already reached 38 billion. So definitely there are alternatives. We can get the money elsewhere. If it's money we need to support real solutions, the money that actually goes to the communities and not the World Bank and other multilateral institutions. And to end, I want to say this is a really joyous picture of the youth doing an action outside the World Trade Organization when we were in Bali, and we were like storming the WTO venue, and it was so joyous, and it was I think this is the message I want to end with, that we can resist with joy, with happiness, without despair. We do not need to despair that we cannot fight against the governments, they're too big, or the World Bank. No, we can resist. The people have more power if we all come together, and especially across 3 continents. Imagine the potential of the power of all of us coming together across those 3 continents and supporting all the communities and all of us really coming together, defending and demanding justice, and demanding that our rights be recognized, and demanding that real solutions be pushed.
Thank you. Thank you, Marilu. Thank you for the energy. It is really important because we got a lot of technical information that could be overwhelming, but it's a good spirit to continue building capacities, to continue reading and analyzing critically what it's being proposed by our governments. And I think one key highlight is that we need to analyze and problematize the partnerships with multilateral mechanisms, with the World Bank, with development banks across the world, and actually see what has been behind the proposals and how we can collectively push to that proposal. And of course, join this campaign. We're going to share the report again in the chat so that you can take a look. And in line with Marilu's comment, we have 3 commenters today to finalize this session. Satrio Mangala is going to be the first one. He's a policy analyst and research manager with Walhi Indonesia. Walhi Indonesia is the Indonesian Forum for the Environment, and is the largest environmental NGO in Indonesia. Also a member of the Global Forest Coalition. And actually, Walhi, it's an interesting organization because it works with partners, it works with communities, and over 500 in members and NGOs to push for real solutions in Indonesia's vast archipelago. Satrio, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Valentina. My sound is clear, right? Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and I will tell a story about that. Will be commented about the TF. There are 2 proposal, right? And Marilu presented, and Kwami Kpondzo that we are there is false in this proposal. Make the consequences in Indonesia actually for the one of the country that have the tropical forest in Southeast Asia, it's more specifically. The first one, I think, in the consequences of the TFF in Indonesia, the first one, I think, it can be undermining the sovereignty. Done forest governance like TFF often sideline indigenous peoples or local communities that place in the forest, replace the community-based forest towards or data control. The second one, I think, the customary territory is redefined or taken over by external actor. This is the important thing, I think, in the TFF mechanism, that NGOs or conservation NGOs or national government practically.
Satrio?
In Indonesia.
Satrio, sorry to interrupt.
I think. Yeah. Okay.
Satrio, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So your sound is breaking a little bit. Could we try to
I'm sorry.
maybe switch off your camera to see if we improve your sound?
Yeah.
Turn off the video?
Okay, I will turn off my camera because I'm.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
No worries. Go ahead, Satrio.
Yeah. So this is best sound, right? So the consequences, second one, I think this is the identification of forests. The logic behind the TFF implies that forests are only worth protecting if they generate monetary compensation. I think this is the false logic. And this reduce a forest from being sacred living space to financial assets, just only the financial asset, disgrading, disregarding their cost and ecological significance. So this is the important thing, that more people of Indonesia in the local communities and also in the indigenous people that live in the forest, they don't think ever their forest can be sell or just like a finance, but it's more than just that, that this is that culture tradition is more spiritual, that you live in the forest. And we have the experience also the practice that almost same the scheme, the payment based on the mechanism in TFF. I think the ETT Plus in Indonesia that has experience with similar scheme, it's shown that conflict in communities, the benefit for first one is often do not reach the community fairly. So the benefit only go to the local elites or state actor that mobilize the fund. That in the TFF have sent the country, the government that the national government that can get the money from the TFF itself. In nation, it is not lack of transparency and accountability that causing the conflict in the community. And the next one, I think the consequences of the TFF in Indonesia, that the model based on the proposal in the board of the proposal, I think I'm worried it can be restricted access and suppression of the traditional local communities and the indigenous peoples that live in as you know, that conservation-oriented funding often comes with restriction on forest use. So this is give the consequences that depends on traditional farming, hunting, or spiritual rituals that do by the indigenous peoples. This threatens the survival of indigenous cultures and livelihood, which are deeply intertwined with the forest ecosystem. I think the last one is I'm worried the mechanism can give in the continuity of financial dependency. For reliance on external conservation incentive like TFF can discourage, I think, this threatening of the community-based forest governance. And second one, when the money stops, the protection may also stop and leaving forest vulnerable again. So I think this is not a solution for the forest. And more deeply, my question is about this proposal. I think there are one critical question: who decide whether a forest is successfully protected? Who decided that one? What are the indicators? If such a standard are set by global local participation, the conservation process becomes biased and technocratic, and it will become unjust, I think. So that's my comment. Thank you, and we can discuss more.
Thank you, Satrios. Thank you for your comments. If you have any questions to him, please do it in the chat. The issue of the indicators is also quite a big issue for other so-called innovative schemes, which are not more than false solutions. And it's interesting that you mention it also for the TFFF. Agora, da Indonésia, a gente vai para o Brasil.
So from Indonesia, we're going to Brazil with two very important leaderships that are here with us today. I'm very honored to present and in this webinar to have Chief Ninawa Huni Kui. He is the leader of the Huni Kui people of the state of Acre in Brazil that represents 118 communities that have over 15,000 people within this community. So we're very honored to be here with Chief Ninawa, that he's going to share his knowledge with us. He has a lot of experience in international advocacy, in meetings that are related to climate change, indigenous rights, and he's also a very loud and important defender in what's related to indigenous rights. So, Chief, thank you.
Olá a todos.
Hello, everyone.
Muito bom dia ainda aqui.
Good morning from Brazil.
Valentina.
Thank you, Valentina. I wanted to thank you for the invitation to be here today and for this initiative that is so necessary that we can continue to move this forward. I come from Acre, the Amazon region in Brazil. As Valentina said, I have been for many years following these discussions, also denouncing and bringing criticism and options for a true and efficient way to solve the impacts that have been happening inside our communities. So I'm talking from Wi-Fi. I don't know if I turn on my camera, it's going to be good, but I prefer to keep my camera closed so I can have a better connection. Maybe at the end I can turn it on. So speaking a little bit about the experience in the communities within my peoples and also other peoples inside that I work with, but I would like to first show and tell you what the TFFF represents. First of all, I wanted to say that it's not an efficient mechanism, that it doesn't help solve the problems of the forest and the people who depend on the forest to survive. And as it has been said by the people who spoke before me, this is another mechanism of financing that is towards this intention of working on financing, and this doesn't have positive results directly in the communities of indigenous peoples and the local communities. This financing model, I think and I analyze it that it has 6 main points that I would like to highlight. So first, this financing model, it doesn't come by itself. It comes with many conditionals. It's related, it's conditioned to many rules and limitations. First of all, these international financing, it comes with reports, with results and metrics that they make sense for the investors, but not for the communities. They also can't indeed mention the need that the local communities and the indigenous peoples need in the forest. And this condition, it removes time, autonomy, energy, and sometimes it disconnects the communities and it removes the protagonism of the communities who are the real protectors. They are nature's and biodiversity's allies. The second point that I would like to share.
The second point that I would like to share is about the logic that continues being a market logic and not a care logic for the forest, as those who spoke before me said. The TFFF talks about the forest as a carbon stock, as ecosystem services to be served to international markets. But forest, it is not only carbon stock, and it is not only ecosystem services. For us, for my people, and for many other people, the territory is alive. The territory, we live our spirituality. We have memories of our ancestors. We have relationships of familiarity with nature. All this, this mechanism that is presented, it reduces all of that to numbers of carbon and a way of deleting or erasing the people history. A third point that I think is very important is the decisions that are concentrated far away from the territories. For example, who decides this kind of financing and where this money goes? What are the projects that receive the money? They are indicators. They are, in general, foreign governments, multilateral banks, and decisions are not taken with the participation of the people who is there in the forest as indigenous peoples and local communities that are really connected to the territories. Right? The peoples of the forest, as a fourth point I would like to talk about, they become only treated as saviors of the planet instead of being rights subjects, the protectors and the territories. Instead of being recognized as right holders, they are recognized as employers, as a source of great financing. And this has a huge risk for indigenous peoples to be seen as services providers, not as very important people. And this model is to assure the climatic goals, international climatic goals, but not being recognized as rights holders with autonomy on their territories, with knowledge and wisdom on their traditional and ancestral way of life. The fifth point I would like to share are the models, the technologies. These are solutions that come from foreign areas, not from our method, our science, our internal technologies of indigenous peoples and local communities, and also from the traditional science and technology that we keep alive inside our territories. Many projects are financed. They deal with other technologies, for example, drone monitoring, satellite monitoring, among other technologies that sometimes they help, but frequently they ignore the local knowledge. They create dependence, and this ends up moving the center of the governance from indigenous peoples and local communities that for thousands of years they are keeping this relationship. The sixth point I would like to share is about this financing model that reproduces inequalities inside the territories. Even when the money from the financing includes indigenous peoples and local communities, when it arrives to the communities, only a small amount reach the communities because most of it remains in governments, in foundations, in large NGOs that work with these issues of environmental compensations, especially as consultant for government. So what the amount of money that reaches the community is very small, many times with a lot of bureaucracy that makes difficult. It's used by the indigenous peoples. For example, in Acre, where I come from, where in Acre State, the COP30 is very connected to this model of the TFFF, where it is being developed a consultancy model that is not the free prior consent model, talking about the benefit sharing, distributing a little resources, and saying that it is for investment from the TFFF.
Bom, também queria
And,
deixar
well,
aqui,
I also
né,
would like to
para finalizar,
say,
né,
to
mais uma vez
conclude,
reforçar aqui esse
once
mecanismo
again,
financeiro, né, que ele vem carregado de
to affirm
promessas,
that
de
this
dólares para as
finance
comunidades,
mechanism that
mas
comes
também
with a
de
lot of
armas
promises,
invisíveis, né, de
dollars for
amarras
the
que não
community, but
são flexíveis
also the
à
invisible
participação direta
ties
das comunidades e
that
tomada de decisões das
they are not
comunidades,
visible
né,
for
como deveria
the
ser. Antes o
community's
governo
participation in the
e
decision making,
as
how it
grandes
should be.
corporações fazem para depois, né,
The governments
trazer as
and large
comunidades para
corporations
serem
take the
ouvidas
decisions
e de
and
forma que não
take it
é
to the
bem
communities to be
clara e não
heard
é de
in
forma
a way that
honesta, né?
it's not clear and it's not honest.
E também nós vemos que
We
isso está
also
muito
see
associado
that
com
this
a questão
is
do
very
carbono, como já
linked
foi
to the
mencionado,
issue of carbon,
né?
as it was
E
said,
isso
and
comprovadamente, aí eu sou uma pessoa que vem da
I,
comunidade, isso não tem tido
I
resultados
am a person that
positivos,
comes from the
né?
community, and I can prove
O
it
Estado
has
tem passado
not
por um
positive
momento muito
results. The
precário
government,
no mínimo nos últimos 6 anos para cá,
the last
cada
60
ano tem se
years,
aumentado o desmatamento, tem se
it was
aumentado
improved.
a
The
alagação, tem aumentado, né, a
deforestation, the
seca, tem
floodings,
rios que
the
a gente pensava
droughts,
que
there
nunca
are
seria,
rivers that we thought that they never could be
teria escassez de água, estão secando,
would
então
suffer
muitos
from water scarcity. They are
problemas de
getting
doença
drought.
estão surgindo, né?
So a lot of diseases are arising. Chief, sorry for interrupting. If you can wrap up, we
Não,
already finished
tranquilo. E
time.
também só
Sorry.
para
No, it's okay.
dizer que
And
esse modelo, né,
just to
de
say that
governança
this
dos povos indígenas
governance
que
model
vem tendo há milhões de
that
anos
indigenous
ainda é
peoples
uma
have
forma
for thousands of
de
years,
poder
it
contribuir
is
na
still a
solução desses
way of
problemas que estão
contributing
acontecendo, que
for
não
this
foram os
to
povos
the
indígenas que
solution
criaram, né?
to the problems
Então,
that are
agradecer
arising and
também
that
pela
were not
oportunidade
created by indigenous
e
people. So
por
I would
aquilo
like
que
to
vocês...
thank for the opportunity. Thank you very much, Chefe Ninawa. Very interesting what you said about this market logic. These are two things that are think they are totally relevant from your talk, the issue of the market logic, that they are not designed for the care or for preserving the people's culture, but to respond to a system that it is already showing that cannot solve the crisis with resources accumulation. And there we are debating something as that we are seeing this international financing is the financial architecture that once again are proposed mechanisms that have no consultation with indigenous communities. And what we bring here today in this campaign is to propose solutions that have to have the voices of indigenous communities, the criteria of the indigenous communities, their proposal in the equation, and of course the financing model that many people they don't like to talk about, that is the capitalist society today that needs, yes, to be debated, to be destroyed, and to build a new mechanism that really respond to those issues. It's not rhetoric, it is a fact. And thank you very much for your talk. Now we are going to Pedro Martins, who is an educator that acts in the Amazon region in Brazil too. He is an educator of the NGO Federation of Organizations for Social Education. It was funded in the 60s, and it works a lot with communities in many states of Brazil to promote alternatives, sustainable alternatives, real alternatives, and to debate to this today. Pedro, thank you very much. Pedro, thanks for being here with us. Thank you, Valentina. Good morning to everyone. I hope you are hearing me okay. If there is any issue with my video or my audio, let me know. It is a pleasure to be here. We from FATE, we thank you a lot for this debate, very enriching and very good for us to reflect a little more on time about, let me see if I have to answer this. About this issue, when we are already in this pathway, as it was said, the pathway from Baku to Belém. So we need, as social movements, popular organizations, to be more aware about these issues. And with that, I want to congratulate the initiative of this study, this report, because we can, in a good time, to make some reflections that even when we are a little late in the process, since it is not ours or with us, the elaboration of the TFFF, but we can still reflect a little more. I would like to highlight also something that is in a way that helps with the content, the fact that the report is very objective with a very interesting design. It will help also with the divulgation of this work. I would like to highlight in this reflection a term that is used to talk about the relationship among the Red Plus and the TFFF. In the report, we use this term of this fund that has the role of complementing the initiative Red Plus. But later they use other work that is to potentialize. The fund will potentialize the initiative at Red Plus. And with that, I would like to call the attention and highlight this point already presented in the report, is how the fund is presented in the two versions. One thing is how it is, but there is a point in which we can think that is how this fund will be. So there is an initiative inside this logic that will potentialize the Red Plus. And I'm talking about the Red Plus not only as climate financing, but also as a market approach to create carbon credits. If the facility will not generate carbon credits, but it uses the same carbon metric, the same logic of financing of nature, what will come after the operationalization with all these bank approaches? What comes next? The facility will not stop there. So it is very important to reflect about this urgency, that a mechanism as a facility that comes to potentialize something that is already quite criticized because of the methodologies that are adopted, with the resistance to Red Plus, to be a way of climate financing to reach the territories. So it's important to see how these mechanisms are innovated, how they are reproduced and strengthened. So I think it is a highlighting point, very interesting to think about. There is a point that maybe started with a doubt, a comment with a doubt, that I don't think that is very well defined how the methodology will be to verify, to check in which areas it is possible to make this contribution of $4 of hectare of preserved forest. What kind of methodology the facility will work with water, with soil, with carbon sequestration? If this methodology is still being discussed. So I add this last point for us, since we have a little time yet until Belém. We are facing a huge challenge here in Brazil that we don't have social participation to discuss a mechanism such important as this one. There is not consultation to population, even less previous informed consultation. The civil society is not being heard to discuss this instrument. So, a reflection that we have in this item, in this instrument, if we have, or if it was already created as a false solution and it cannot stop being a false solution. So I would like to reflect on this because this and to make this reach the territories because it will mobilize a lot of people, a lot of territories. So in which way we will approach this facility thinking in that we can build some true alternatives, true solutions. I know this is a very difficult question to answer, but it is an important reflection for us to have our pathway, the social movements pathway, and the popular organizations towards the COP30 in Belém. I thank you again, and Pase, we are with organizations and we are sending initiatives. Thank you very much, people. Thank you very much, Pedro, for your talk. Very important questions that are, some of them are open. There are several questions in the chat. Some of them were already answered. I would like to answer who would like to make a question. I will read some of them here that maybe after we can make a round for all the people that is here. Aida asked,
could you please further explain about the ministers of finance receiving the annual payments? I cannot find that in the 2.0 versions of the concept note. Ligia Barakat,
can someone add the information of the people that present today in the organizations in the chat? We're going to share that, Ligia, with all the bios of the expert people that join us today. Andre Echeverri, hi Pablo, please talk more about the actors involved in the correlation 80-20. I think that's a question that has got a lot of curiosity. Besides the World Bank, who else is involved in those debts? Is there a government that has manifested opposition to the proposal? Iris is asking if they shouldn't actually be disaggregating the resources inside the TFF by population within the indigenous people and involving women, young people, people with disabilities throughout these mechanisms. Yvonne Janice is saying, could you explain the relationship between TFF and the debt of the tropical countries?
Nam, what happens if the funds faces not only below expected returns, but losses? Who absorbs that risk or holds liability? Are there any grievances system in the proposal for communities affected by funded projects that came from participating in the TFFF?
A question for Satrio. What's the percentage of destruction in Indonesia high from Venezuela? And Brent Milliken is saying in Portuguese,
no lugar, né, da obsessão com essas soluções de mercado, senão teria mais sentido focar, né, planos de ação voltados para enfrentar os motores do desmatamento. Os nossos expertos, então, vamos responder alguma dessas questões.
Please, if we could ask some of these questions.
Or if anyone else would like to add another additional question, but maybe Pablo, would you like to make a round of reflections to wrap up and answer some of the questions?
Yes, thank you. Muchas gracias, Valentina.
Yeah, thank you, Valentina. We have
question
been
and answers
answering
que
in
está
the
en el
question
Zoom.
and answer section in the Zoom.
Quería referirme solo a dos
I
cuestiones.
wanted to refer myself to two things. One, that topic of the debt is not clear. We have review version 1 and version 2. And the question is, who's going to be paying for it if it goes wrong? And this fund actually cannot obtain the income that is expected, the revenue that is expected. So that's not clear. We don't know how they're going to be registering that. And that's a question that they never answer with clarity from the people that have worked in the proposal of the TFF. Or are all the investors be told like, oh, invest, and if it goes wrong, you're going to lose the money? If that's the logic, the document doesn't explain that. The second topic that I wanted to make reference to is that the logical thing is that it will be given to the states through their finance department or treasury department of the country, and that each government will invest as they needed. The version 1 is too ample. Version 2 says that it needs to be invested directly or indirectly in terms of deforestation, but there will be any conditions. There won't be any conditions. TFFF is not about projects. It's given to the country as per the amount of square meters of forest that they can keep every year. So it's not for the project. There's no indexes. The only one that they have is that there will be a satellite observation that the state can do about the amount of forest that will be standing every year. That's the main indicator. And in case that the country cannot build this satellite observational system of their foresting based on the parameters they request, they will use an international system, but there's no other indicators. So a government that receives this $4 is not obligated to adopt policies against deforestation or against the agricultural or mining industries. They are free to do or not do anything. The only thing that the mechanism cares for is that in terms of satellite, they need to show that they have the same amount of tropical forest that they had last year with a small deforestation of 0.6. That is the average. Beyond that, the question is, are we going to be resolving just with money, even if we increase it from $4 to $2,000? If there are not commitments and clear policies from the governments of stopping the expansion of the agricultural border and stop the oil exploration in tropical forests and stop the expansion of mining, without national policies, we will never able to stop deforestation, and without strengthening the participation of social organizations, of indigenous people and the social civil population, money can do anything, even $4 per hectare, which is ridiculous. Yeah, thank you, Pablo. It's truly worrisome because these mechanisms were proposed by leaders of the World Bank, and they cannot really resolve the situation thinking in these corporate schemes. And this is a ticking bomb as well. This type of interventions in territories, especially considering organized crime, the illegal cutting, and the lack enforcement of the law, and lack of promotion of human rights of the indigenous people and women's rights. So how can this all become a cocktail, a dangerous cocktail that is confusing and that is not including the populations that are affected? Kwame, do you want to say something? Marilu, Chefe? Any final comments to answer to some of the questions?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Valentina, and thank you for the questions. I think Pablo has summarized the, the, the questions, but it's very important to look at the way the funding is coming to the Ministry of Finance, and any kind of the way the money will be disbursed. It's up to the government. So it means that the government can do anything. The money can be held, and the money will not reach the communities and indigenous people. So it's something that we need to look at, and the way it's framed, it means clearly that the TFFF is just a mechanism of building or making money, not for solution on the ground, but just to please the investors and the government. Just to add to what Pablo said. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But,
Go ahead, Marilu.
sorry. Kwame and Pablo have answered everything. Actually, really very excellent about especially the question on what happens to the real money if it fails. Who's going to hold that debt? Who's going to so those are very vague. Those are not questions that are being answered, in fact probably avoided. And what Kwame said, definitely really important, that there is no we're almost sure that the money is not going to get to the local communities and the indigenous peoples, and if they even get there, if it's going to be a loan or if they have to pay it back, or because these private investors, they're going to want to get their money back. They're not doing this out of the kindness of their heart. This is an investment. This is a business deal. They are investing and they're going to expect a return on their investment. So that's as simple as that. And I think that the last thing I want to say is that this is going to be presented by Brazil, Indonesia, and the DRC, the governments, as a victory, as a success, that they have come up with a fantastic solution to conserving and saving the three largest tropical forests. And this is going to have a very big launch right before, or maybe at the start or during the COP30 in Brazil. So don't so look past the press releases, look past the promises, the smokescreen, and really, go deeper, read like we have the way we wrote the report is we purposely wrote it in a way that would be very clear, straight to the point, so that because if you the TFF papers that Brazil released, version 1, version 2, they're very technical and hard to read papers, and they're like 80 pages, so it's really not friendly to the to people to understand. So I think we are definitely, one of the goals of this campaign is to really debunk, explain, and unmask what this TFF is, and in that sense then strategize on how we campaign and how we come together and push for alternatives. That's it. Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming to the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilu. We have only 5 minutes left. We have one question from Manu Cantalisi, and I would really like to hear from Satrio and Chefe Ninawa. Pedro unfortunately had to leave to other commitments, but yes, go ahead, Manu. Very quickly, if possible. Thank you.
Can you hear me and see me? I don't know if you can. Can you just confirm?
We can. Yeah, we can hear you.
Amazing. So my name is Manuela Cantalisi. I've been working in the climate and nature space for 10 years and more with Indigenous peoples and local communities for the past 4. I was invited by the Ministry of Environment of Brazil to support this process and dialogue to invite the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities, JATC, to co-design the TFFF process of dialogues with Indigenous peoples and local communities. So JATC is doing this process with the Brazilian government, and I'd like to make myself available to present anything that you're curious about TFFF and really come into the information, because I think that this process is so important. And since it's on the go, since it's happening, I really think that this group here could help make it better. So instead of just debunking the process altogether, how could this group of amazing experts make this process better? So the TFFF concept note will be open to receive feedback from the civil society until the end of the month. And I really, really, really encourage this group to come and really make this consultation process better. So if you go on the website, tfff.earth, you'll be able to reflect your comments, to say what is important to you, to say what's on your mind, and also to comment on the last point about this being a money that's being lent. This is not a money that's being lent. The investments are made on the TFFF in the tropical forest countries, and then the money would be used, at least 20% would go to Indigenous peoples and local communities directly. So this is an ongoing process, and we really, really, really appreciate this group. We think that, of course, there's a different vision about how to value standing forest, and if market solutions are how we're going to solve this problem or not, which is it's a very conceptual difference, right? If market solutions are the solution or not. But if this is happening anyway, how could this group of really, really brilliant minds, and also of the experts who are the stewards of nature, who are living there, Indigenous peoples, local communities, Chefe Ninawa, I want to make myself available to have a conversation with you. I really value your work for a generation, for millennia. So how can we make this process better? So I just want to say that I make myself available, and that I really, really, really value this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manu, for your comments. Really interesting. Always confronting sites, it's important to growth. So we appreciate that you came today and that you can voice also the concerns or the proposals, etc. We have been working, many of us, in different aspects, tracking financial architectures throughout decades, so we come with a perspective of not only improving mechanisms that already exist, but also to problematize the root causes of the problem, and create a valid architecture that can actually support those who are at the front and not replicate, the same unequal structures that we have been seeing, And we know that this issue of finance, climate finance, biodiversity finance is very tough. It's very difficult, and we're here to support. So we're happy to also work together. So any other comments from the experts regarding Manu's comment?
Yes, Valentina. Yes, to the comment of Manu. Yeah. So we don't think we can improve TFF. We have to build a different system. I mean, if you can please say to those that are promoting this that they are in the wrong pathway. And this is not going to solve the issue of deforestation. And why? Because you are mainly relying on private investment. And as you say in both versions, you cannot assure that you're going to have those interests that you expect. And you even recognize that this mechanism maybe can fail. So why are we losing time developing a mechanism to fund forests based on market investment while we have to develop proposals to bring public funds to protect forests? This is the key issue. We think that TFFF is a way to take the responsibility out of states and developed countries of what they have done to climate change, and suddenly say, okay, we're not going to ask you any more money. What we're going to do is create a market mechanism, a new market mechanism to do it. So I think we really have to rethink totally what you are trying to do. I'm very surprised that the government of Brazil is going on this way when we know this is not going to work, because the $25,000 million that you want to raise from public government in order to raise another $100,000 million. Well, we should be promoting a tax on fossil fuels. We should be promoting a tax, a percentage on the budget of the military budget of the world. So we really are in the in the bad way when it comes to TFF. We have very different alternatives. And that is the problem. That's not a problem of a paragraph or to change an article. It's the whole proposal, how it has been thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Pablo, and thank you, Manu, also for raising your question and your comment. Unfortunately, we have to close the webinar. Our interpreters have been here for 2 hours, and believe me, it is quite a demanding job, but we are going to have 2 webinars, okay? Manu and the TFFF people, please join us. Let's have this conversation. We need you here also to reflect and to create better ways. You could also share these perhaps with your colleagues and have reflections on how communities and civil societies organizations are seeing, this equation. And maybe we could move forward into some sort of pathway or possibility to contribute into real climate finance that is going to go to the communities on the ground without intermediaries. Thank you again for being here. Thank you for staying during these 2 hours of session. I just would like to remind you that we will have 2 other webinars coming soon, so stay tuned in our social media. This webinar was organized by Fundación Solón, the Global Forest Coalition, and Asamblea Mundial por la Amazonía. I want to thank our interpreters, also Pablo Solón, also Kwami Kpondzo from Africa, Marilu, of course, Satrio, who joined from Indonesia, o Chefe Ninawa e o Pedro Martins da FASE. Muito obrigada. Até mais.